Alright, welcome back to the channel, and here's a midwinter project. It's going to be an outside project just because I don't have the room in the garage at this point because we may get snow and cold weather again. But I want to get started on this job. This is a 2005 Honda CR-V of my grandson's, and we pulled the head off last winter and had it rebuilt, and it went back together fine. But when we had it apart, we saw that there was some scoring in one of the cylinders, and it is definitely an oil burner. So part of this project may end up being the replacement of this particular engine and moving on to something with less miles on it. It has over 250,000 miles on it. So that's maybe part of the project. But the project for right now is going to be the rear end suspension. A lot of the bushings in the control arms are shot, and the knuckle bushings are gone, and it wore out the inside of the tires. So once we get this thing running again and up on blocks, I'm going to probably pull off all four tires, and most likely we're going to replace the tires. We had put struts all the way around on this thing last time and redid the front end suspension and had it aligned, and it was working well other than the use of the oil. But I'm going to turn the camera around here and show you the parts that we're going to put on. Okay, there's the control arms that we're going to replace, and the bushings for the knuckle and the control arm. And while we're at it, we're going to replace the rotors and the calipers and the brake pads. All right, I'm sure that these are not all the parts that we're going to end up using for this project. We live in Northeast Ohio, and there is a lot of rust that we have to contend with. And we'll probably end up breaking off bolts and other problems that we will run into. But we will put this on time lapse, and you can see the progression of this project. And hopefully it won't take very long, but I doubt that we're going to get it done in one day. Do is put a little air in that tire and get a battery put in it because the other one was shot. And we're going to locate it on a little flatter piece of the drive, and we're going to jack it up, put it on jack stands, and remove all four tires. All right, since I'm waiting on that battery, there's this dent in the back, and it's pushed it away from the fender. And I think what I can do is I can use my heat gun and just a variety of different pry bars and hammer handles and such. I'm going to try to warm this up and get this back out and then re-secure it into the fender. We'll see how this goes. All right, it's not perfect, but it did get the majority of it out. It's still a little lumpy. It did crack it right up in here, and up underneath the tail light, I'm sure that there's a fastener that has pulled out. So once I get it away from my project pile here, I'll take that light out and go in and secure it so that it's tight up against the fender so it doesn't catch the air and end up, pulling on it as you're driving down the road. But fairly easy fix with very little effort. The battery has arrived, so let's get that in. All right, before I put the oil in it, I went and grabbed the battery charger. It's got it on a 50 amp boost right now, and hopefully I'm holding that in the right position so that you can see what the voltage is. 14.08 is what it is reading right now. All right, at least we've got it up on the stick now, so let's go in and give it another try and see if we're charging and see how it runs. Alright, the battery light is still on, so I'm going to be pretty confident that we're not going to see a charge out of that alternator. But I'm going to unhook the battery and we'll test it. Well, that's odd. Never seen that before. .34. Anybody got any ideas? Put them in the comments, please. Maybe that's why that other battery went bad. The regulator in the alternator is bad? Question mark? Ah. Alright, I've got the wheels off of it now, and you can see how I got it hauled back here. Used a flatbed, but I tied up the calipers so that they were out of the way. The rotors were in such bad shape that I ended up just removing those so that I could transport it. But I got the bushings for here. I got the bushings for the knuckles down here. And I don't know that I got a bushing. I'm really not even sure what is back there, but we'll dig into that and find out. But I also got the bushing for here and the bushing for back here. So we should be able to get the majority of this done and straightened out without too much trouble. But let's get it apart and see how it goes. right, it's the next morning and I've got the knuckle mounted up in a vise out here on the driveway. I'm going to try to clean this up with a wire brush and other methods, but I'm going to get this CV joint cleaned out from that ugly grease also. I've ordered the bushings for the other section that I didn't have the bushings for. They should be here within a few days, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get all 3 of these bushings on the knuckle replaced, and those are all 3 different sizes, so I need to make sure I get those back in the right spots. And we'll put this on time lapse and get it done quickly. All right, I thought I was going to finish up with this today, at least get all the bushings in it and put on this rust encapsulator from Eastwood. I'll get that put on, but when I got this last bushing, and it's the wrong size. It's about 50 thousandths too small. The length, the inside diameter for the bolt to go through is fine, but this OD right here is about 50 thousandths too small. So I'm going to go in and see if I can find the right one and get that ordered. But the plans is to use this material on this to coat it. I didn't get all the rust off, but I got the majority of the bad stuff off of it. And then I will go back and just spray some leftover paint on it. I don't care what color it is, just to try to slow down that rust a little bit. Okay, I'll bring you back when I get to the next project on this. All right. All right, I got this part coated with that encapsulator, and it came out fairly nice, and it got all the rust covered up, but I'm going to turn the camera around and give you a closer look at that. All right, there's the knuckle, the hub assembly, the backing plate for the parking brake, but there is that completed with a paintbrush. So what I'm going to do is take some Rust-Oleum, it looks like red I'm going to use, and we're going to go ahead and coat that and try to get a little more resistant to all the rust. All right, there's 2 coats of that red, and it's not going to win any beauty contest. I did not paint the surface where the wheel mounts up to that hub because I don't want it to be sticking, or I don't want it wearing and coming loose. So the hub surface wasn't painted. But I'll let that dry, and we'll go over and see if we can get some of that other suspension member torn apart and cleaned up a little bit.
All right, my microphone did not hook up, so I'm doing a voiceover here. Didn't know how these particular mounting brackets went in to that bushing. I thought they might screw apart, but I ended up cutting down through between the bushing and one of the flange, right where my hand is right now. And one of the mistakes I made is I did not check to see where those were clocked to mount up flush to the frame or the unibody, but ended up figuring it out.
All right, this side is apart, and I'm going to switch over here, and I don't have the faintest idea what that actual bushing looks like, so I'm going to take a wire brush, clean that up as best I can, and see if I can figure out how that comes apart.
After getting it cleaned up, I found that it was just a regular bushing like it's being used in the rest of it. Set it up, beat it out, and actually the one that was 50 thousandths too small fit into that area, so I was set and ready to go.
All right, it's a new day, and I'm back out here on this Honda Civic, and if you remember earlier on in the video, I had a hard time removing one of the front mounting bolts. So I've tried to put a bolt back up in it, and I can't get a hold of the threaded portion on the inside. So I'm going to take you underneath and show you what my plans are. All right, this is what it looks like under a vehicle that lives in the Rust Belt. And this front hole right here, I had no problems getting the bolt out. But on this hole, and you probably can't see up in there, but the threaded portion that's up in there, I'm going to say approximately an inch, is separated from the top. And it was probably just spot welded on there. But my plans are that I'm going to open up probably this side of this. I'm going to go in with the wafer wheel on a grinder and open up a section of this and see if I cannot weld that threaded section back onto whatever that spacer is or bushing is that's underneath of it, so that I can remount that. And that's just one of the things that we have to do here in the Rust Belt. All right, this is what came out of that area. Pretty well tore up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this surface up, clean this surface up, and we're going to find a way to reattach that to that, and then we're going to secure this piece to that part of the subframe that I cut out so that it won't twist when I go to put that bolt back in there. I'll bring you back after I've done a little work on this. All right, this piece is ready to go back in. I did run into a little bit of a problem when I welded it in there. The back side of the weld kind of blistered in on to the bolt, and it ended up snugging it up to the point where I had to go get the impact to pull it back out. And I happened to have a carbide Dremel tool that I just put on my electric drill and went into the inside and cleaned it back up so that that bolt would go in freely. But you can see maybe down in there where it was swollen up from that weld. But I'll turn the camera around and we'll get back to putting this piece in. okay, all of that, and there's still weak spots in this thing. So what I'm going to end up doing, you can see where I traced in the yellow paint pen. I'm going to cut that portion out and replace that with some 1/8 inch material. It was actually thinner than that, but that hole right here was actually a hole, original factory hole, but it's so rotted around it that it is just, there's no strength to it at all around this support bolt, that mounting bolt. So I'm going to remove this whole thing, pull everything back out, but this is solid, that's solid, this side is patched up, and this side is patched up. So I'll cut this out and replace that whole thing. The filler plate made and fitted, and I'm going to butt weld it around the 3 edges and then lap weld it right there, because that thin material is a little bit thinner and a little bit weaker, so I don't want to be doing a bunch of burn throughs.
Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back out. I'm going to put the strut back on into location. I'm going to put this pivot bolt into place. And then because I did not have a location marked for exactly how these were going in, I'm going to take it out, get them lined up with the frame mounts, and make a mark on the shaft and on the collar here, that bushing. And then I'm going to bring them back up and press them into place. This is how I'm going to clock these ears. I've mounted the strut back to its mount, just started the bolt in, the swing arm bushing. I put the bolt in, got it started. Then I came over here. Well, actually first, what I did is I held these up and I marked just with a magic marker so that they were in line with the flat surfaces. I did that on both of those. And then I came underneath and held just a steel plate up here and picked this arm up. As you can see, I got it marked already, but I held this plate up here and then I pushed this suspension up so that I could draw a line across the center line. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the marks on those mounting bolt surfaces, and I'm just going to line those lines up to these. Now in the press it's going to be kind of difficult, but I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to take a big C-clamp and at least get them started so the lines are lined up, and then probably use a deep well socket on each side for those ears to go into, and then I'm going to go ahead and push it together with the press. All right, these two pieces are done, ready to go back on, but I need one more thing, and that's the initiative to put them on. But I broke into this project to build a plasma cutting table, weld bench, and if you get a chance, head over, take a look at that video, and maybe leave some comments and let me know what you think. But I got to finish up this project and get back on the second phase of the fencing that I started last year. So we'll get to work and make some videos, probably in time lapse, to put this thing together.
The weather held off much longer than forecasted, and everything is back together except for I've got one bolt left in there for the brake hose, and that's the banjo bolt for the brakes. One thing that you need to make sure of is on this cam bolt for your adjustment, you need to make sure that both cams on both sides of that bolt are in the same direction. It'll go on two different ways, but let me turn the camera around here and let's see if I can show you here. Okay, there's the other side, but you see the cam is going down, and I really don't think that it makes a difference, and I could be wrong. I'm not a certified Honda mechanic, whether those should go up or they should go down, and I didn't check it. Oh, you know, I could go check the other side, and I'll go do that now. All right, it is also going down, so I had a 50-50 chance of getting that correct, or it's correct either way, I don't know. But for that adjustment, you need to make sure that it's the same on front and the back side when you put that together. But the other side is assembled, and I've got rain coming, so I get the tools picked up and then start on this again and get the rotor and the brakes and all that assembled on that side. Then I'll come over to this side and do the same thing. All right, I came out and got the brake shoes on for the parking brake. I'm gonna go ahead and get the rotor put back on it and get the caliper mounted on it and the brake line hooked up. So when I get the other side done, I can bleed the brakes. I'm gonna turn around and put it on time lapse again. All right, I've got the other side torn apart, and I thought I started with the worst side, but evidently not. The front section where the swing arm hooks on to the unibody itself, kind of like the other side, but worse, all rusted out. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you what I'm going to do. There it is, all rusted out, and that is where the second hole, well, there's the first hole, and then it spans over here, and there's supposed to be another section here that bolts in the back side of that bushing pivot location. So what I have done is I have put together a kind of a template for myself just out of poster board, and what I'll do is I'm going to make that out of a piece of metal, and that way I'll be able to get my measurement. It's 5 3/4 of an inch over to this hole, and the only thing to kind of get me in line is this line across here where it hadn't rusted yet. So I'll pull a straight line across over to here, measure the 5 3/4 and get it in line with that, and I'll probably cut that out of my plasma table that I just made. See how this goes. I'm starting on the rough fit, and I've got to do a little more pounding on it, straighten out the edges, and then let me take you underneath to show you how this turned out. If you take a straight edge going across, lays flat across that side and hits flat across this surface over here. And what I'll do is I will take these lines right here, you see back here, I'm going to just transfer those across to this piece over here on both sides, and then I've got my verniers. I'm going to send them at 5 3/4 and scribe a line across and give myself a place to drill that hole. There it is, welded together. I'm pleased with the way that it came out. What I'll do next is I'll drill some maybe 1/2-inch holes in between these screw holes, and I will be able to plug weld it in between the screw holes. But you can see I'm going through double layers here. Now these holes were drilled in just to, when I had it on there, I needed to pry down to get the bottom of it to the location that I wanted it. So I'll weld those closed also, but I'll clean all the rust off of there, or at least the best that I can, and I will put some of that rust encapsulator on there and then screw that into place and then weld it the best I can. And on the back side, well, you can see that the gas tank is right there. I'm not going to do any welding extremely close to that, but I'll put up a shield there so that I will deflect any of the sparks away, and we'll get this thing buttoned up. All right, there is a quick shot of the paper template and the end product, and changed a little bit, but that cutting up in the seams and unfolding it and making it one piece is something that I would probably try again, because it worked out fairly well. Bushings are all replaced, and I've got the rust encapsulator put on both the major pieces, but you can see that they changed the color on this encapsulator. It's now silver. So this one's going to end up different colors as far as that base coat goes, but I still think I'm going to paint them red like the other side. But I'm going to get out to the car, and then we're going to clean up the rust on the bottom and get that section welded in place. It's the next day. The sun came out, warm enough to do a little spray painting. So I've got these two major pieces painted, and I'll take you over to the car and show you how I've prepped it to put in the other section that I made. A little wire brushing around this, get that section screwed into place and then welded, and then we'll do a little more grinding on some of these rough spots and get some of that encapsulator put on those rusty areas, so it might last a few years longer. Alright, there I've cleaned up so that I can get a good weld against the good part of the frame, and underneath I've cleaned up some of that, and back here got her cleaned up enough that I'm going to put some of that encapsulator on. I'm going to hit that with just a hand wire brush because of these tiny wires right here. Don't want to get the grinder by that and mess that up, but I'll get that bracket mounted back up there and in the right position by using those screws but also I drilled those larger 1/2-inch holes in it to like plug weld it into place along with the seam along the edge. But we'll get to that and get that welded on. All right, there it is, still wet, and it's not 100%, but it's what it's getting. And underneath, it got everything that got wire brushed off, coated, and I was going to try to stay away from the underside of where that new piece is going to go on, but then I figured what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw it up into there, draw lines where the holes are, and then clean it off so that I have a nice surface to weld to. But I'm gonna have to wait a day or two to get to that point so that I can let this dry a little bit and get that bracket welded on. All right, there's the other side, or the plate that I made up for that mount. And yes, my neighbor loves to shoot, and I love to go over and shoot with him. So I'm not even gonna try to wait till he's not shooting, because it could go on for a while. There it is, screwed in place, went around the edges, tightened up all the joints where it's gonna get weld. And you can see in these holes right here, along the edge, where I am going to end up in here. I'm gonna plug weld those, and then I'll end up pulling out those screws and doing the same thing, but I'm gonna draw a trace around this whole border and clean it up to weld. All right, that new mount is taken off, but there's the outline of it and the plug weld holes. And those are the other areas that I'm gonna end up welding. And the back edge of this actually sits across the back of here, and it's just going to get seam sealed so that we'll keep the majority of the water out of that mount. There it is. I mixed up too much of that seam sealer, and I went ahead and just slopped it on the rest of the area. When that dries up, I will go ahead, and I got a can of spray undercoat, and I'll spray it over everything that has that rust encapsulator on it. Then I'll start putting it back together. All right. Following day we got snow. This is about 3 days after that. It's still 30s and low or upper 20s during the night, so this project has gotten put on hold until it gets warm enough. I got some spray undercoating to cover up all that rust encapsulator, and then we'll get back on this project. All right, driver's side is done, and going to be bleeding the brakes, but I'm going to get the tires back on it and get her back on the ground so I can get the engine pulled out.